Seminar. We have one of our own faculty here presenting today. This is what we hope is the first of many celebratory talks by faculty that have been recently promoted or tenured. So it's my privilege to introduce Dr. Brittany Brand. Dr. Brand got her undergraduate degree at Wright State University in geology. She then came to Boise State University and did a master's. So she's an alumna of this department. I believe Craig White was your master's advisor. She then did her PhD at Arizona State University with Amanda Clark. And then after that, she went to the University of Washington, where she was both a lecturer and a research scientist in the Department of Earth and Space Sciences. She then came to Boise State University as faculty in the Geosciences department. Since 2017, Dr. Brand has been the director of the Hazards and Climate Resilience Institute, HCRI, which you'll hear a lot about today. Many of you were already involved with in various ways. This talk in part celebrates the fact that Dr. Brand is recently and will next year be promoted to the rank of full professor, which is the kind of highest for those of you that are graduate students and don't know about these ranks. Full professor is sort of the highest you can go unless you get some kind of special dispensation from the university or college. So it is a career scale achievement. And we are having this seminar today in recognition of her contributions to the department, the university, and the broader community. So, Brittany, thank you.
Yeah, thanks so much, Leho. All right, can everybody on Zoom hear us? Let's see, maybe Ashley in the chat, could you let me know if you can hear us now? Or somebody in the chat, can you let me know if you can hear us in Zoom? Great, thanks. Okay, well, thank you all so much for being here. Many probably know me as a volcanologist, which is what I came into the department being, and I still very much have a volcanology career and lots of opportunities there. But today I wanted to talk about the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute, specifically give you some insights into how we've developed and the kinds of things that we're doing, because it's all relevant to geosciences, and some ways that you might want to get involved. So to get started, why do we start this institute? So it was actually when Carson McPherson-Krutsky came here as a PhD student, and she was working at the intersection of hazards and hazard education and perceptions. And so it was really more of a behavioral science focused project and looking at what does it take to convince people to change their behavior with respect to becoming prepared for a potential disaster. And so we were looking for advisors for her and weren't really sure at the university who did this. And so we were thinking, who does resilience work at Boise State? And we started looking around and realized that there was somebody in practically every department on campus working under the umbrella of resilience, but very few of us knew each other. And of course, even fewer were working together. So we started this institute fundamentally as a platform to connect with our colleagues, to try to break down our disciplinary silos and start working together on what's fundamentally a multidisciplinary problem, which is building community resilience. And of course, as geoscientists, we were very focused initially on the intersection of the built environment and the natural environment. And we realized in working with our colleagues that, well, we can't have resilient communities without having resilient people in those communities. And so looking at community resilience just from the perspective of hazards in the built environment was too limiting. So we had to expand. And so now we have the pillars of natural environment, built environment, health and well-being, and economy and society. And the graphic here really is meant to demonstrate that it's not that there are these disparate dimensions, but rather we have to find a way to work within and amongst each other and the interconnectedness of our various disciplines. And again, break down those silos to work better together. And fundamentally, what our institute tries to do is break down any silos, break down any barriers for working with our communities or for our community partners to work with the university. So all of the work that we do, every single research project we do, every educational module we create is all community engaged, community based. So we work with our community partners to understand what's going on in the communities, what are some of the biggest pain points, what are some of the problems that they're challenged with, and how would they like to work with the university to try to address those. So it's really, again, breaking down the disciplinary silos across the university, breaking down some of the silos across sectors, and bringing everybody together to work toward building community resilience. So who we are, we have a pretty diverse team. Leadership, we've got me as the director, and these are rotating roles. So we just brought in our new co-director, Nick Hudnya, sorry if I pronounced that wrong, from civil engineering. So his expertise, very relevant for those in the room, is rock mechanics and rock slides. So he does a lot of work across Idaho. And of course, Carson McPherson Krutsky, who co-founded the Institute as a PhD student and has stayed on for the last couple of years as a research scientist and our community engagement coordinator. And then the rest of these folks are on our executive team. So I think there we go, our executive team. And so just to show the kind of diversity of folks that we're connecting with across campus. So these are folks that really help drive the initiatives of the university or the Institute and the different things that we do. And then we have an advisory board as well. And these folks are really grounded in our community and help us make sure that everything we do is truly grounded in community needs, and that we understand how to share what we do and develop a language that we can all use to talk about these issues. Then we have our, our members disappeared. That's strange. Uh-oh. There seems to be some problems with my graphics. Just stand by just a second. So it'll be a real boring presentation. If maybe I can. Maybe we could just put it on the desktop.
Yeah.
That way they get real boring, just a bunch of words and no fun pictures. Anybody ever had that nightmare? You get up to give a presentation and you just have like the big red X's across your. I'm not dreaming. No. Oh, sorry. Here. Yeah. Stand by. Do this.
That's different. I don't do pointing.
Hopefully this will be better. Yeah, there we go. I see some graphics in there. Right, am I still sharing on Zoom? I think I am. Okay. So then we also have our members. And so we've got research, faculty, staff, postdocs, research students, community partners, university partners. And again, we are a platform for connecting. And so what we've done with our profiles is make them all self-similar. So when you go to our how to join page and click on your respective area, it'll ask you some specific questions about what is it that you do, how does it relate to resilience, what classes do you teach if you're faculty? So it's a way for students to find different types of classes in different departments. Who do you collaborate with? What are some of your collaborative interests? And so it's a search mechanism to try to help us find each other a little bit better, but also tell our story and who we are and what we're doing, not just faculty, but also our students and our community partners. All right, so why resilience? So as I think, as we all know, that we're seeing with the changing climate, the severity and frequency of severe events, severe storms, wildfires are increasing substantially every year. We also have population growth into hazardous areas like flood zones and wildfire zones. And so building community resilience is really a national priority. And we see that through some of the FEMA funding that's coming out with their Building Resilient Communities program. And we see it with the National Academies of Science reports. Here there's 3: enhancing community resilience through social capital and connectedness, motivating local climate adaptation and strengthening resilience, and building and measuring community resilience. And really these are the message in these different reports is that we really need to develop a shared understanding of what it means to be resilient and how to build resilience equitably, and how do we bridge silos across sectors and really try to break some of those down so that we're embedding resilience in everything we do with respect to societies. How do we compile and translate locally relevant data and knowledge for decision makers what kind of metrics. We need metrics to be able to assess resilience. What are the most relevant for different types of communities of different sizes? And we really need to develop tools to translate this information for decision makers and then work with those decision makers to ensure that we're communicating and understanding all of the information. So this is all coming from these. And then also when we got started, we had a lot of meetings with Idaho stakeholders, and we're asking, like, what are your biggest issues with respect to building resilience in your communities? And it's the thing that kept coming up was, we don't even know where we are. Like, we have no baseline from which to grow from. So we need resilience assessments to really figure out where we are and how we build from here. So the way we define community resilience, now resilience, of course, can be defined in thousands of different ways, but the definition that we adopt is the capacity for communities, individuals, institutions, businesses, et cetera, to thrive, no matter what kinds of chronic stresses or acute shocks they may experience. This is coming from the Resilient Cities Network definition. And so the reason we like this is because, yeah, we do need to focus on those acute shocks, those earthquakes and the landslides and the floods and the cyber attacks and the economic downturns. Those are our acute shocks. But if we're not also focused on our chronic stresses, that's the issues within a community, those slow burning issues that really weaken the fabric of a community over time, then that compromises a community's ability to prepare for, respond to, and recover from those acute shocks. And those are things like access to education, healthcare, affordable housing, access to clean water, food, you name it. And so when we're thinking about community resilience, we're looking holistically at all of those dimensions. So these are our objectives for the Institute. So we have 7 objectives: leading community-based resilience assessments and strategies. And so throughout this talk, I'm going to go through just some examples of how we're doing most of these. Developing tools with and for planners and decision makers. And again, these are really coming from, we didn't just pull these out of the air. We were really working with our community to figure out what the needs were, reading the literature, and that's how we came up with these. Fostering community and connections, really opening up opportunities to learn from each other across the university and across our communities. Addressing data gaps and research needs. We are a research institute, so we're research at our core, but we're really focused on solutions-oriented research. Creating evidence-based public hazard education strategies, offering diverse education and research opportunities for our students, and acquiring an array of diverse funding to support the Institute and become self-sustaining. So the next 15 minutes, I'm really going to focus on this first one because we just finished our pilot projects, or a case study for how we run resilience assessments and how we might facilitate these in communities. So I'm really going to focus on that today. And then after that, I'll go through just some examples of these other things. So that's the plan. So the case study was with the city of Kamei. Kind of awkward to have this up here, isn't it? Is that in the way? We'll probably have to just move it around as it blocks my images. So get rid of that too. All right. So leading community resilience assessments and strategies. How do we work with communities to help them recognize their strengths and their challenges? And then how do we help them figure out how to address their challenges? So our first community is the city of Kamei, which you see here on this alluvial fan. And the reason we started working with them is because they have an issue with flooding. So they've got this creek that runs down from the hills up here in a steep drainage, and it opens up down on this alluvial fan, and it floods the community. And so the Idaho Office of Emergency Management reached out to us to see if we could work with them on some of their flooding issues and some flood mitigation strategies. And we said, yeah, sure. But what if we also looked at your community holistically and we did a resilience assessment? And they were really excited about it. And so the resilience assessment itself did incorporate flooding and their flood issues, but it also looked at leadership and strategy, health and well-being, economy and society, and infrastructure and environment. Now, the city of Kamei, it's a small community, 1,200 people. It's in an interesting location in the sense that the city itself is in Lewis County, which borders Idaho County. So this creek that floods is the border of Lewis County and Idaho County, and the entire area is on the Nez Perce Tribal Reservation. So we all not only had to navigate working with stakeholders within the community, but we had to bring multiple jurisdictions and have productive conversations in what traditionally has been a little bit of a contentious situation. So here we go. So to do this, I started a class called a VIP class. I think you're all aware of what those are. So it's basically a research course called Building Resilient Communities. And I had 4 students. These 4 students work with me on the resilience assessment, and then some students continue, which I'll talk to you about in a little bit. But I wanted to emphasize that this was a collaboration between the community and Boise State students. So this is the framework that we used. So this is called the City Resilience Framework. It was developed by the 100 Resilient Cities and a company called ARUP, an engineering company. And the idea of this framework is it helps a community understand their ability to withstand a variety of different types of shocks and stresses. Now it has 4 dimensions, again, infrastructure, environment, leadership, strategy, health and well-being, economy, and society. And then under each of those, they have goals. So for example, in infrastructure and environment, several of the goals are providing reliable communications and mobility, ensuring continuity of critical services, provides and enhances natural and man-made assets. The thing about this is that it was really developed for urban centers, so really large cities. And the idea is that this framework is used to break down the silos within a city, like the city of Boise, that has many different departments that are all doing their different things that are interrelated but separate. And so the idea is that the city would hire a chief resilience officer who would come in a very disruptive way and essentially break down those barriers in the city and start trying to figure out how to embed the idea of resilience across all city functions. Now, the city of Kamiah they have departments, but they also only have about 3 people working in their office, right? So my research question with this, really is this kind of framework, can this kind of framework be adapted to rural communities? And in what ways? And how might we need to adapt it in the future? So to again look at one of these examples, so the dimension of infrastructure and environment and these 3 goals, so the way they're assessed is by using indicators. So under each of these goals, there's a series of indicators. So for example, to what extent does the community have emergency response plans? To what extent does the community have optimal use of critical infrastructure or conservation of assets? So for each of these indicators, there's a series of questions, both qualitative and quantitative, that you can use to assess where the community is with respect to those indicators and with respect to meeting that goal. So again, the research questions that we used with this project are, does the City Resilience Index work for rural communities? And does our whole community approach improve collaboration across sectors? So rather than focusing internally just to the city, what we did was we tried to build relationships outside of the city, with the city and with all sectors across the city to bring everybody, the whole community, together for this assessment. So the way we started was just to get to know them. We spent 3 months just talking to people. No questions about, no indicator questions. We hadn't kicked off the resilience assessment because for me, it was really important to get to know who these people were. What are their values? What is their culture like? What are their concerns? What are they excited about? What do they want to see in their city? What are they worried about seeing in their city as it continues into the future? And so we ended up meeting with over 40 people. We went up there a couple of times and met with people in person. We did a lot of Zoom meetings, which, I think that's a silver lining of the pandemic. I don't think before the pandemic that would have gone over as well. But with the pandemic, most people actually preferred to meet over Zoom because it was more convenient. And every time I would meet with one person, they'd say, you really need to talk to this person. And it would just snowball. And so I ended up working with and talking to a lot of different people. And that helped us figure out, when we started the assessment, how do we group people? Because we didn't want to assess based on individuals. We wanted to bring people together and see if by bringing people from across these different sectors of the community together in these different ways, does that drive collaboration within the community? So, and we also, we spoke to the Nez Perce Tribal General Council. We got to go up, and the Nez Perce Natural Resource Coordinator brought us around and introduced us to the Appaloosa horses, which are just amazing creatures. And so it's a really great experience to get to know these folks. And I think the reason that this was successful is because we put in that effort ahead of time. So by the time I was emailing people and saying, hey, can you come to a 75-minute meeting to answer a bunch of questions about your community? I said, yeah, because they already knew who I was and why we were doing this. So we initiated the assessment. We had 30, oops, there's a missing thing there. I think we had 33 interviews, all of them no less than 75 minutes long. with 41 participants. So the way this works is you've got these indicators, there are 52 indicators, and then there's about 156 questions that you ask to assess where the community is with respect to those interviews. Oh, there it was, 33 interviews and 41 participants. And the participants, a lot of them actually engaged in multiple different interviews on the different topics. So this is a snapshot of what the resilience assessment looks like, where you can see again the dimensions in the center there and the goals on the outside. And it's just a snapshot to see, this is not uncommon. Rural communities, they have their grit, their ability that when something happens, they roll up their sleeves and they help each other. We heard that time and time again. And so their collective identity and community support was pretty strong coming out of the assessment. And then they had some areas that were doing okay, and then some areas that they had the most need. This in itself, I don't feel is very helpful, right? Because it's just a broad snapshot. So we also dug into each of these individually. But before I show you that, we also emphasized, we pulled all the information from the community in terms of what they were already doing. What kinds of actions were they taking to address some of their needs already? And we integrated that into the assessment and overlaid it here. So you could see that, maybe they're doing okay in the empowered stakeholder, but they've actually got some things going on that they're working on those. And we put that in the report as well. So we were recognizing not only their areas of need, but what they're doing well. And this is how we broke it down. So this is one of the dimensions. So infrastructure and ecosystem, the goal of reduced exposure and fragility, and here are the indicators. And so remember on this graph for infrastructure and ecosystem, reduced exposure and fragility, they're doing okay. But if you dig into that a little bit more deeply, you'll see that they're doing pretty good with comprehensive hazard mapping and code enforcement. And their areas of weakness, which led to that yellow score, that moderate score, were effectively managed protected ecosystems and robust protected infrastructure. So then the way we broke this down, rather than writing a 300-page report that nobody would read, we use these types of graphics and we came up with their strengths. Just again, this is all they're telling us and we reflect it back. This is not our assessment of them. This is their assessment of them. And we're just giving them the information in a different way that's more digestible. So their strengths that they have, they've well-constrained hazards and risk in their community. The community pitches in during disaster. So these are the things they really do well. And then they've got their challenges. Many homes are unprepared for wildfire. Lawyer Creek is flooding. And as of yet, they've had no mitigation on the creek to stop that flooding. And it's getting worse. By the way, the creek itself used to be a meandering creek, but they straightened it over the last 100 years for land use. So the water shoots down, the sediments building up in the lower stream. And that's why flooding is getting so bad. Plus with climate change and more rain on snow events, they get more flashy events. And so they really need to be looking into stream restoration with respect to Lawyer Creek and whatnot. So we did this for all of those dimensions for them. And then what we did was say, okay, here's your assessment. What do you think? What did we get right? What did we get wrong? Did we misunderstand anything? We gave them an opportunity to look through all of it and give us feedback. Then we held a workshop, a resilience workshop, which was really solutions oriented. And what we did was we brought together the people we interviewed, but we also brought community partners that support the community in different ways. So Clearwater Economic Development Association, the USDA, Rural Development, their Ag Department, IDALU Economic Development. So some public health folks, Department of Lands. We brought these folks to the room so that when they were talking about potential solutions, they had the folks there that would be supporting them through those solutions. They had folks that really knew that information so they could say, yeah, that's a good idea. Or yeah, maybe try this instead because we tried that in another community and it didn't work. Right. So we had their resources there in the workshop. And it was a lot. There was a lot to go over because this was a huge assessment. So we really wanted them not focused on we can all talk about the challenges, until we're blue in the face, but we wanted them to now shift and just focus on solutions. So we decided to use challenge and solution trees, where the challenge tree is the core problems. Maybe it's emergency management. The effects are what you see in the community and the limbs, and then the roots are the root causes of those problems. So as a VIP team, our team put together their challenge tree, and then we had them fill out the solutions tree. We of course gave them an opportunity to look at the challenge tree and make sure we didn't get anything right or didn't misunderstand anything. So they validated that, but then they very quickly moved to the solutions. And this ended up working really well. So for an example, emergency management and response, what they see and what they reported to us in that assessment are things like many homes unprepared for wildfire, public alerts don't reach all residents, flooding threatens local businesses and homes, and stormwater infrastructure is weak. But the root causes of those things are things like lack of planning process that aligns with long-term strategies of management, little hazard education, no comprehensive public alert system. And what was interesting is the root causes, a lot of them, we ended up color coding them because when you looked around the room at all of the different trees and all of the different challenge areas, the root causes actually showed up in a lot of different trees, but manifested themselves differently in the community, if it was a health impact or a natural hazard impact or risk. And so it allowed them to really visualize how addressing this could have ripple effects or co-benefits across many facets of the community and why people across the community had to be involved in getting that done. So it worked pretty well. We printed these massive trees, and you have the challenge tree and the solution tree. So they self-selected, they found their own, which tree they wanted to go to first. I kind of liked the fact that it was trees too. It just made it feel like, I don't know, earthy and nice. But so, and then they had Post-it notes, they would talk about things, and it was really effective. They really drilled into some important potential solutions. And we recorded all of this for them, and they moved around the room throughout the day. And then the second half of the day, we moved them on to action planning. So we had them think about some of those solutions, what they think is the highest priority. We actually helped them by, like, we had them plotted on an ease versus urgency plot, things like that. So we had a little bit more in there to help them prioritize. And then we had them do some action planning. So we gave them this table, which there's the action, the opportunity for resilience. We try to frame it positively versus like the need or the challenge to be addressed. Who will be involved? When will it happen? And what resources are available? So I'm going to show you 4 examples here, but really this was 15 pages of tables that we came up with with respect to infrastructure or emergency management or public health and well-being or education. We had different tables for each of these using this framework. So here, of course, we already knew they had a flood problem. So creating some sort of technical working group to address it, an infrastructure study. So they wanted an infrastructure asset map and upgrade plan to be able to qualify for some of the grants that were coming through. Economic resilience study. So they were struggling with funding the services in their city, and they weren't sure where some of their deficits were coming from. So they wanted an economic resilience or a tax revenue study. And housing, of course, like many communities in Idaho, they had a lack of affordable housing or just housing in general, housing stock and resilient housing. So then that was about 2 semesters of our VIP. And then we moved into the second aspect of our VIP, which was, hey, now that we know some of your needs, I started emailing professors across campus. So in our executive team saying, hey, this city up in North Idaho needs an economic resilience study. Would you be interested in leading this with a student? And found professors across the university and students, and tied the students and the professors to specific projects to get things started. And I feel like that was, with all of the work that we did and everything that we gave them, I think taking that next step of helping them get some things started was a real catalyst. And so these have worked really well. The students are wrapping up their projects. The community is super happy about all the results that we've shared with them. And yeah, so I think it worked out really well. And it was pretty amazing for the students as well, right? So we've got students, one, Sabrina, who's a PhD student. She had just started. There you are. Sabrina did the asset map for them and really worked with them to map mainly their water infrastructure in the community and gave them some ideas for how they might go about creating an upgrade plan. We had a housing student in urban studies working with Vanessa Fry. Taya worked with Lee Parton in economics. Anujay, communication major, worked with me. And note that we've got geoscience students in here, but really these opportunities are for anybody across campus. Any student in any major interested in doing this kind of work could find a place here. So then we did create a resilience website, which I'll pull up because, again, like, I didn't feel like a 300-page report would be that useful for this community. So we have what we did and why on the front page. You can go to the resilience assessment and see, here's that wheel, and then you can scroll down and it goes through all of the different dimensions and indicators. So it's a pretty extensive document. You can go down to see here are all the people that we connected with in the interviews. And at the bottom of this, there's the different meetings we had. So here's the health and social welfare meeting and the business and finance, and you can see who we interviewed. So again, this is about building community and collaboration. These are the results of the workshop. We put the problem and solution trees up here. And then we had the, oh yeah, here's the resilience strategy roadmap. So here's that table I showed you with the few projects that we kicked off, but they've got all of these. And right now what we're doing is working with the Clearwater Economic Development Association to map these to their comprehensive plan update and to their hazard mitigation plan update. So some of these, of course, we're not going to be able, the community needs to now take on these on their own to make sure that they get them there. We are helping them map those to their comprehensive plan updates and things. And then they can submit feedback about the teams. This is who we are and why we were doing this work with them. And this is a living website that serves the community. So coming back to these research questions, does the City Resilience Index work? Yeah, it worked. It was a lot though. It was a bit more complicated than I think it needed to be. They were really kind and patient with all of the questions that we ended up asking them. So I think we really need to find a way to simplify these for rural communities. And so that's going to be the focus of a PhD student coming into the department next semester. And the quantitative metrics too, we're just working with the community this small. We need to find better quantitative metrics to assess resilience. The ones we were using were really, they're just not, the granularity wasn't there. They were really more for countywide data. It was the only types of data we could find for that. So it worked. I think the process itself, so the assessment is one thing. Yeah, we got the results and we helped them, but I think that process of getting to know the community, bringing them together, having conversations, hearing things like from the emergency manager in one of the counties saying, wow, like I didn't realize that the Nez Perce Natural Resource Division was doing so much and that they were actually willing to share that with us and talk to us and work with us. And so there was some really nice discussions that were had that hadn't been, that engagement hadn't happened in a positive way in the past. And so did it establish, or does our whole community approach improve collaboration across sectors? So this is something that we need to build better into a research study in the future. I think we could do some sort of social network analyses type things before and after these studies. This one, we were really just trying to figure out what we were doing in a sense. So that's something that we're going to be building in and really looking at what are those ties in the community? If there's like that one person or one type of person that really is the catalyst, who are they? How do we identify them and how do we engage them in this process? Because they're the ones that are going to get things done. So we have some opportunity for that as well. But we did then kick off the Lawyer Creek Technical Working Group, Flood Mitigation Technical Working Group. And if this is an assessment, I think this could be a pretty good assessment for how well we did in terms of promoting collaboration, because this kicked off after the resilience assessment, even though this problem was what initiated the work in the first place. But you can just see, so these are all of the people, 24 stakeholders involved in this technical working group. We met 8 times. Each meeting was an hour and a half long. We had a kickoff meeting that was like 3 hours long up in Kamei. And all of the orange were people that participated in all but maybe one meeting. So I think just looking at the number of people we ended up bringing into that technical working group and the fact that we retained them through the different meeting structures is evidence that we were able to build collaboration in this community in a way that hadn't happened in the past. Because the emergency manager said, you know, we've been working on this problem forever. We've tried to bring people together on it, but we just can't get people engaged. We got people engaged. And I think it was because it was on the tail of this resilience assessment. We had built that collaboration and that trust across the different sectors in the community and with us. So just a testimonial here from the deputy clerk, which was our main point person, that the work we produce transcends the expectations for the city, and the body of work compiled will serve the city of Kamei into the next decade for decision-making and grant application purposes. So we seem to have made an impact. And this is Aaron Miles from the Nez Perce Reservation, the natural resources.
I've enjoyed working with you guys. I think it's important to recognize the value that universities bring, Boise State University, namely, and the work that is happening, because it couldn't happen without a third party and people who are solution oriented to help get over some of the challenges, the hurdles. We definitely couldn't do it without kind of a nice way of entering into all this, not diving off the deep end, but wading into the shallow end. Yeah.
And of course, they're talking about those difficult relationships across those jurisdictional boundaries and bringing people together in a way that was positive. And the point of all of this is really to plan for resilience. The more the community knows about those chronic stresses, the more they can work to address them in the blue sky days. And the more they can be prepared for those acute events, the acute shock events. And so that's the motivation for this kind of work. All right, so we're pretty excited about that. And we're looking for ways to scale that up, serve more communities, fund it. The Idaho Office of Emergency Management is probably going to at least fund one community a year for us. Moving on, what we think, we don't know. We're talking to them about that. So that we do have some potential one-time funding to work with communities, but we're really looking at how we scale this up, not just serving one community at a time. So the next slides, and I'm just looking at the time. So I'm going to probably just fly through these because these are just examples. So in terms of developing the tools and the different objectives of the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute. So with respect to developing tools with and for decision makers, we have a number of ways we do this. One, Sabrina, our new PhD student, is working with Valley County. We got a FEMA risk map grant funded. Essentially, we had some planners come to us after we presented at a planning meeting, an Idaho Planning Association meeting, that said, we have all of these data sets, but they're all over the place. There's no easy way to get them. And when we have them, we don't understand them and they don't cover the whole area. And it's just really hard to make new development decisions and hazard-based decisions without having all the data sets or knowing how to work with them. And so we proposed this study, which combines social vulnerability, flood and other hazard data, and infrastructure data into a user design-centered platform. So we're really working with the community. Sabrina and Carson are working with the community to figure out what it is they want, how they want it, and designing something specifically for them. That's one example. We also created a COVID dashboard at the very start of the pandemic. This was a state dashboard. Oh, wait, sorry, different dashboard. This is the Boise State dashboard. We also did the state one. So we talked to the public health office at Boise State, and with the Idaho Policy Institute, we designed their public health dashboard. And so this is something that I'm sure all of you have been looking at in the last few years. With respect to fostering community and connections, there's lots of different ways we do this through networking events and potentially conferences in the future. But one of the most impactful things are our community engagement panels. So at the beginning of every year, we reach out to our community and we have a topic or a theme area. In 2021-22, it was resilience action, needs and actions. And we asked them, what topics do you want to talk about under this theme? And the community told us, and then we designed webinars around them. And the panels, we were very intentional about our panels being driven by our community partners, not Boise State faculty, not faculty. We want to hear from them, and we want to open up opportunities for us to learn from our community stakeholders and for community stakeholders to learn from each other. So this was the ones we had for resilience last year. And then this year we've been focused on sustainability in alignment with the resource nexus for sustainability and just all the different people that have been involved. We are leading the Idaho State Hazards Technical Working Group. Our next meeting is Thursday at 3. This is on Zoom. So if you're interested, the topic of the meeting is the State Hazard Mitigation Plan Update. So if you'd like to learn a little bit about the emergency management side of the hazard sciences, this would be really fun for you. Just email me and I'll send you the link. These are some projects that we ended up funding. So we got some seed grant. Well, we got some funding from the Division of Research at Boise State, and we ran a competition and funded some folks to do some research, community engaged research at Boise State. So 2 faculty and 2 students. We are getting this funded. We just got recommendation for this award. So this is, again, a community engaged wildfire project. It's wildfire evacuation modeling, but we are doing behavioral science with it. So we're actually working with specific communities and asking them questions about, in this scenario, a wildfire is coming, you get a knock on the door, what would you do? We use that data and we put it into this agent-based model, and we look at how that's going to affect people being able to get out in the evacuations. And with this, again, we're working with our fire managers and emergency managers to make sure that we targeting the neighborhoods that they want us to target, and we're using their plans, their messaging, and we're allowing them to test what they want or think they're going to do in this situation, and to be able to take it back to them and work through what we learned and how that might drive some course correction if needed. We also, the Resource Nexus for Sustainability Grand Challenge, I don't know if you've heard about that, but it's initiated from the university. There's several grand challenges, one Healthy Idaho, and then ours, the Resource Nexus. And this is what they called for, an integrative approach to catalyze a nexus of scholars. This initiative is focused on the interactions between the built environment through the lens of our disciplines and our stakeholders to build resilient urban and rural systems. And I thought, well, that sounds right up our alley. So we, the HCRI leadership got together and we brought together leaders across campus, massive team of people across disciplines to drive this. It's been really exciting, lots of communication, lots of community networking events. And we ended up launching a request for proposals, but we did it in an inclusive way where we allowed Boise State faculty and community partners to submit proposals, but not proposals, just a project idea, any level of maturity. So it's just like, I have this watershed and there's a problem, or I have, I'm not really sure what to do with this cyanobacteria blooms in this watershed, and they could just pitch the idea. And then we try to work to find them community or Boise State partners if they don't already have one, and help them build out their ideas. So these are just some of the topics that were submitted. We had 10 pitches come in from faculty and 21 from community partners, which I think really demonstrates how much of a need there is for this type of partnership between our community and Boise State. And we ended up inviting 12 of those to go ahead for that full proposal, because the idea of this is building an interdisciplinary, community engaged, solutions oriented research ecosystem. So it's really trying to drive interdisciplinary research. So we could only really push forward the ones that can spin up into some sort of really interdisciplinary bigger project that could go for extramural funding. So we only have about 200,000 to award. So we did invite 12 to go forward, but for the rest of them, we're finding other ways to support them. So every single team that submitted an idea has a liaison through our Resource Nexus team that is working with them to find solutions, either to go through a research accelerator next year because their projects are really good, but just not quite there. We wanted to help them get them there. So we invited them, created a research accelerator. We have some teams working with service learning to see if they could be facilitated, the projects through courses, and then through other mechanisms. On to another objective, creating evidence-based public hazard and education strategies. So we've got these websites that we created. So these were all created with Boise State students, faculty, and an external stakeholder. So the climate ones we worked with NOAA, National Weather Service, to build those out. The earthquake ones, we worked with Zach Lifton in the Idaho Geologic Survey. So we really, again, we're trying to work internally and externally to build out hazard communication materials that really are accessible and location specific. Our recent one, and we also try to find clever ways to hook people. This is the climate change page where this is the ski season length on the vertical axis and the season in years. And so you can see as the years go on from the 80s to present, the season length days for skiing is decreasing. So you've got the unhappy skier skiing down the negative trend line there. And we did create a state COVID dashboard before the state had one. Ours was the only one available in Spanish. So we kept it up even after the state initiated theirs, just because we felt it was simpler, and we had the Spanish version for a Spanish speaking population. We also do active learning education strategies. So these are, a lot of the work we do fits under multiple objectives. So this is a research study, again, thinking about how do we motivate people to prepare for a potential disaster, in this case, wildfire. So we implemented some evidence-based education, active learning type of workshops for wildfire, and did pre and post tests, and found that we were able to increase people's belief that they could protect themselves and their family by taking actions. So we initiated it in Ada County, and then somehow Ventura County in California heard about it and contracted with us to run it and adapt it for them. And all of these strategies that are these education modules that we create are place-based and adaptable. And so we design them so that if somebody in a totally different ecosystem wanted to do this, they would swap out the pictures and the recommendations just to align with theirs, but they could use the general framework. Then Carson did something similar with earthquake preparedness in Portland and worked specifically with the Latinx community, really engaged some of their community leaders to figure out how to develop culturally appropriate education materials. And again, using more active learning, engaging type of interactions. And then Carson worked with those stakeholders and then they taught them. So we had some assessments. Again, this is a research study, but we were really looking at how to create effective strategies that our communities can adapt, not just run through a university. Diverse education opportunities. You already saw that we've got a VIP class. So if you're interested in engaging in that kind of work, you can enroll in this class. We also just got a new contract between Tetra Tech and the Idaho Office of Emergency Management. This is part of the state hazard mitigation plan update, but it's a sort of an assessment that goes along with it. So it's a seismic vulnerability assessment, and we've got a team of students from geosciences and engineering and physics working with faculty. They're going to go out and do rapid building assessments at some buildings that are of concern to 4 counties in southeastern Idaho, and then help with a retrofit plan. And so this all will go into the state hazard mitigation plan. So it's a high impact, exciting opportunity for our students. Acquiring an array of funding. So these are just a list of some of the recent funding that we either have pending or funded. And again, just pointing out that we're really trying to diversify what's coming in from contracts from cities, nonprofits, counties, FEMA, NSF, EPA. So this is really exciting. It was an environmental justice, thriving communities, technical assistance center program. So we partnered, Portland State asked us if we would partner with them on this. So they got a massive grant funded, and $175K comes to our institute specifically for community engaged work. So, yeah, I think we're doing all right, but we still have a lot to do. And so just to conclude, these are the types of things that the Hazard and Climate Resilience Institute does. We're still young, we're still growing, we're still ambitious. We want to engage more people across campus, more students in the work that we do. And this work really, it does lead to scientific advancement in the fields of many different fields, but I feel like what's most important about it is the impact that we're having in communities. So just to finish, if you're interested in engaging with us, you can join the Institute. There's just a form that you fill out on our website. We post news and events in terms of not just the events that we're holding, but other people that are holding events that might be of interest to our community. We have a listserv as well. You can sign up for the listserv and get emails. Follow us on Twitter. You can enroll in our VIP classes. You can donate to us if you want to support some of these efforts. And something that's not on here right now, but we do have an intern position open right now. So we're looking ideally for a work study student. So if you're interested in helping us with upkeeping our website and our communications and our Twitter feed and all of that, we are looking for an intern at the moment. So yeah, thank you so much for your attention and happy to take questions.